How's it going, everyone? It's Ben Falcon's Media Corner back again with a brand new video for today. Welcome back to the movie review, aka After I Saw. This time for this new episode for the series is going to be my review on the 2024 supernatural horror film, and that is Imaginary. Now, this is the newest horror film from Blumhouse, and this is directed by Jeff Wadlow, whom he has worked with Blumhouse before in the past, in which he has made 2 horror films with those guys, in which he has made Truth or Dare and Fantasy Island. So he has now returned to them, making a new horror film, which is this film. And in this film, we follow this woman named Jessica, played by DeWanda, in which she moves back into a childhood home with her family, which consists her husband and her 2 stepkids. And what ends up happening later on in the movie, her youngest stepdaughter named Alice finds a stuffed teddy bear whom is named Chauncey, and later down in the line in the movie, her behavior becomes more and more concerning, and so for Jessica, she has to intervene, only for her to realize that Chauncey is much more than just a stuffed bear than she believed him to be. So that's pretty much the story of Imaginary. Now, this is Blumhouse's second horror film to be released this year, in which their very first film to be released this year was, of course, Night Swim, in which that came out in January this year. And you guys may know how I felt about that movie, in which I wasn't really a fan of that movie. I just really didn't like it in the slightest. Although, I didn't absolutely hate the film, because I've seen far worse horror films from Blumhouse and all of that. Although I would still say it's one of Blumhouse's weakest horror films they have made in recent years and all of that. But as for me going into this movie, I did have pretty low expectations for this movie, even though I didn't see much of the trailers, but I saw a few posters for this film, and once I saw the posters for this film, I was just like, I don't know what this one's going to be like for myself here and all that. And once I heard that Jeff Wadlow was behind the camera for this movie, I was a bit concerned, because he hasn't had like the best track records in terms of him doing horror films, in which he has directed a few horror films before in the past, and he's actually directed 2 with Blumhouse already, in which they were, like I said, Truth or Dare and Fantasy Island, and both of those movies I thought were absolutely awful. Like, they were just absolutely god-awful. Like, Truth or Dare I thought was laughably bad, and Fantasy Island I thought that film was even much worse than Truth or Dare, and it's by far my least favorite horror film from Blumhouse and all that. And I didn't even know much of the stars of the film, except you got DeWanda, whom you may know her from the most recent Jurassic World film, which was Jurassic World Dominion. And you also have in the film Betty Buckley, in which she has done a film with Blumhouse before in the past, which was Split, which I absolutely love that film. And she has done a few other things here and there, which she was actually pretty good in and all of that. So this film came out on the 8th of March of this year, and I did see this film on opening day, and I saw this in a really small screening, although there wasn't that many people in, unfortunately. But after watching this whole movie here, this is definitely another Blumhouse film here that I wasn't really a fan of here. But I wouldn't necessarily say this is Jeff Wadlow's absolute worst since Truth or Dare or Fantasy Island here, because I can say this film's a bit better than those 2 films, but it still doesn't say much here, because, like I said before, I just wasn't really a fan of this one here. But the things that I did like out of this movie here was the concept, in which it is pretty unique, and yeah, it does sound pretty interesting on paper here. And the effects in the film, they are kind of cool. Like, they do use a bit of a mixture of like CG and practical effects here. And the performances in the film, like, everyone do try their best for their performances here. Like, DeWanda does try her best for a performance here, as well as with Tom Payne and Betty Buckley, and even the young actress who plays the young girl in the film, Alice. She does try her best here for a performance, and everyone else, they do try their best here. But it's just the storytelling here for this film I thought was really poor here, because the way it's executed here was just really poor here, because the film follows the exact same tropes that we've seen before in the past, like these kind of horror films. Like, it does follow the exact same cliches that we've seen before in the past here, and the way they were executed here was just not that good here. I thought those cliches could have been better. Could have been a whole lot better here and all that, for the way, like, it could have been executed a whole lot better here. But it's just the way the film plays it all out here, which I just found it not all that good here, because I was just like, yeah, I've seen this before in the past here. And while, like I said before, the concept does sound pretty unique and interesting on paper, it's just, it kind of took some essence out of like other horror films here. Like, it kind of took some essence out of like Poltergeist and A Nightmare on Elm Street and Insidious, which those are better films here. And as I was watching the film, I was like, yeah, this kind of feels like that film and that film and that film. And when it comes to the scares in the film, they were just cheap jump scares. Yeah, none of them. I didn't find any of them overall that creepy or even that scary here and all of that. And the way they were directed here, it kind of felt really bland here and all of that. And as for the pacing for the film, it is really draggy here, even though the film is only on for an hour and 44 minutes, which is it is a pretty reasonable runtime here, but it's just that there are a few scenes in the film that do play off pretty slow and yet pretty boring here. And even when it gets to the final act of the film, like the final act is kind of entertaining. It's just that the way it tries to end off and all that, I felt really messy here, because there was a moment as I was watching the film, I was like, I thought it was over, but then it was like, but they were like, nope, we're still going here. And for that, I thought it was just really messy here. But bottom line is, all I can say is that Imaginary, it's definitely another one of Blumhouse's not so good horror films here. It's definitely another one of their weakest films here. And I wouldn't necessarily say this is the absolute worst here. I wouldn't say it's even worse than some of the other horror films they've done before in the past, which I really did not like here. Like, I wouldn't say it's even worse than Truth or Dare or Fantasy Island here and all of that. But if you're a fan of like these kind of horror films or anything like that, I can say this will definitely be one for yourselves here to check out here with either just yourself or your best friend here. So that's pretty much all I have to say about Imaginary. I'm going to give Imaginary 2 out of 5. Yeah, I thought this film could have been a whole lot worse than I expected here, because as I mentioned before, I did go into this film with low expectations. And like I said before, there were a few things I did surprisingly like out of this film here, but for everything else that was surrounding this whole film here, I just immediately was not a fan of here in the slightest. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching my AK for a Soul review on Imaginary, and let me know what you think of this movie if you have seen this already, or if you just recently checked out this film. Did you have a really good time with this, or was this not really a popcorn treat? As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and this has been Falcon's Media Corner signing off.